Welcome into the PHNX Diamondbacks show, brought to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's #1 sportsbook app. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. I'm your host, Makayla Perkins. I have booted Derek Montilla off the island. He is no longer the mayor of this town because now I have claimed his spot. Joining me is my co-host, Jesse, the vice mayor of PHNX. Jesse, how are you doing? What the heck was that 7th inning? I'm all over the place.
It was rough. Yeah, the Diamondbacks bullpen is not the most experienced. A few parts of this team have a whole lot of experience behind them, but that bullpen in particular, and unfortunately, we saw that late in the game. But yes, we never needed Derek anyway, so it's good to finally have it like this, right?
Yeah, we cut the extra weight off of this podcast. I have vetoed him as the mayor. I am taking over, and it's my show now. So, but yeah, that game was super interesting. It was going so well until the 7th inning, and then just total collapse, which is really unfortunate. Keenan Middleton making his Diamondbacks debut and just, I don't know if it was nerves or whatever it was, but giving up 2 home runs is not the best way to get out there and show the team what you got. So unfortunately, the Diamondbacks, they have split the series with the St. Louis Cardinals, but honestly, I'm not too upset about it. I think splitting the series with the Cardinals is kind of a win in my book. How do you feel about that, Jesse?
It really is a win. The Diamondbacks historically have played very, very poorly in St. Louis. I think if they had won today, it would have been the first time that they'd won 3 straight against the Cardinals since like 2007. And when that happened, it happened at Chase Field. It didn't happen in St. Louis. So the Diamondbacks have really never had consistent success playing in that ballpark. And it's easy to see why. I mean, that place is packed day in, day out. It's, 40,000 plus every single game like it was this series. It's a really hard place to play. And the Cardinals have also historically been a really good baseball team. So, yeah, I mean, I think you kind of tasted that the D-backs had a shot at winning this series, at taking 3 of 4, which really would have been a statement for them. Unfortunately, that's not the final outcome. But like you said, a series split is certainly nothing to be too disappointed about right now.
Yeah, I would have probably been shocked if they won the series against the Cardinals. Charles Woodall Pike in the comments saying was really hoping to see another series win today, but there are worse fates than a split. And I totally agree. I think a series win would have been phenomenal, especially considering I don't think anybody had the Diamondbacks winning a series in St. Louis. So it would have been really cool to see, but splitting a series, I'll take it. It was a really great series, honestly. And I think the best game the Diamondbacks have played, like the most complete game this year, happened when Merrill Kelly was pitching in that game on Saturday. That was probably the best game that I've seen the Diamondbacks play all year long. So I think there's a lot of wins that came out of this series. And I think, obviously today was disappointing, especially that 7th inning, but there's a lot of things that the Diamondbacks should be happy about that came out of this series.
I mean, at this point, Makayla, the Diamondbacks are still batting like 185 as a team. So the fact that we're sitting here talking about a baseball team that's played one of the 3 or 4 hardest schedules to this point and is 10-13 is really a pretty great outcome in a lot of ways. And obviously, this one was disappointing. I think the Diamondbacks bullpen was kind of due for a stinker, especially with Mark Melancon out for the time being, and Ian Kennedy probably not being available in this one. You kind of knew the D-backs were going to be relying on some of these arms that they've recently called up from the minors. And, when I first saw Keenan Middleton throwing, I was actually pretty impressed. I mean, he's throwing like 97, 98 miles an hour. He got a few whiffs on his breaking pitch, which looked really good as well. But yeah, I mean, you could just tell that the Cardinals were kind of ready for what was coming. They must have done some good scouting or something on him, because they were more than prepared for those fastballs up in the zone. But yeah, I mean, this just kind of comes with the territory of the way that the Diamondbacks have built this bullpen, which is, a couple veterans, and if those guys get hurt, then you're leaning on guys like Keenan Middleton, and Kyle Nelson and Caleb Smith, and these kinds of things are going to happen from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say I'm not going to hit the panic button quite yet on some of those like younger pitchers coming out of the bullpen. Like you
Sure.
were saying with Keenan Middleton, I think that he has a really high ceiling, and for whatever reason today was just not his day, but I think that he has the potential to be a really good bullpen arm. And then also another pitcher that we saw this series that I'm actually really excited about coming out of the bullpen is Luis Frias.
Sure.
I know he had that really weird balk score a run situation
Yeah.
happen. But I watched him pitch in a few minor league games last year, and he was lights out, and he moved his way up through the system quite quickly. So I'm really excited about both Keenan Middleton and Luis Frias. I think they're both going to be really great bullpen pitchers, and hopefully this series is just a little warm up, and then from
Sure.
this point forward, it'll be much better. But like Chris in the comments saying, bullpen trauma is D-backs fandom. Yeah, it kind of just comes with the territory when you're a D-backs fan. I will say though, outside of this game, like you had said, Jesse, the bullpen looked really, really great. Obviously, the starting pitching in that first game, Humberto Castellanos wasn't the best. Him and Caleb Smith kind of tortured me for 5 innings. But outside of that starting pitching performance, the pitching in general in this series was phenomenal. It was really,
Yeah.
really good.
Right.
And like I said, Merrill Kelly's game on Saturday was like a masterclass. He pitched 7 scoreless innings. So I guess that leads me to my next question, which is what was your highlight of this series and what got you the most excited?
I think when you talked about Merrill Kelly there, I mean, that game I think was probably the most complete game the Diamondbacks have played. And I mean, Merrill was just incredible,
Yeah,
going, inning for inning with Miles Michaelis, who was also throwing incredibly well. I mean, yesterday was the most fun I've had watching a baseball game in a long time, just watching
yeah,
those guys go back and forth. It was really something. But yeah, I mean, if Merrill Kelly is really this guy, I mean, if he's really a guy who maybe is not so much of a 4 or 5 starting pitcher, but maybe like a number 3, number 2 type of a starting pitcher. I mean, that's what he's looked like this season. It's hard to argue with a 1.27 ERA, 5 starts into the season. He's been
yeah,
incredible for this baseball team. And I think what really stands out to me on the positive side for this series is that Zach Gallen didn't even pitch in this
yeah.
series. Zach Gallen pitched the last game against the Dodgers. The Diamondbacks just, played a really competitive series, splitting 4 games in St. Louis with really good starting pitching, and arguably their best starter wasn't even a part of that. That's a really good sign for them moving forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The starting pitching, like I said, outside of Thursday's game was really cool. Adam Wainwright and Madison Bumgarner. I think, Adam Wainwright kind of had a little bit of a leg up on that matchup, but still, Mad Bum
Sure.
went 5 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. Goldie got his first home run of the year off Mad Bum. But
Right, right.
outside of that, a pretty great performance from Mad Bum. And then you go into Saturday, and coming into Saturday, Miles Mikolas had the 5th lowest ERA in the National League, and so obviously he has been pitching lights out. He kind of had a few rough years. 2018 was probably his best year. He was in the Cy Young conversation. I
Yeah.
think he finished 6th in voting in that year. And so he also came into that game. He had thrown 19 scoreless innings, which was the longest streak in the majors so far this year. And then obviously Ketel Marte had his first home run of the year off of Miles. But the
Right.
fact that, coming into that matchup, it was Miles versus Merrill Kelly. And I think Merrill Kelly went toe to toe with Miles. And obviously he beat Miles in that matchup. But it was really cool to see that game because, you have a really great, both 2 great pitchers on the mound just going toe to toe. Merrill Kelly tossed 7 shutout innings. And then Ketel Marte hit his first home run of the year, which was really cool to see. And then Nick Ahmed obviously had that insane defensive play to get Goldie out, which was really cool for me because I'm a little petty and I love the fact that Nick Ahmed got Goldschmidt out. But that was just like what I think Saturday's game was probably my favorite game so far this year. The bullpen didn't blow it. Noe and Ian Kennedy looked really great.
Yeah. Right.
So I love Saturday's game. It was so cool to watch.
Chris just chimed in the comments about all the home runs that we've seen lately, which is so true. Yeah, the home runs
Yeah.
are certainly a sign of hope for this team. The Diamondbacks hit 4 in this game today. Even though they didn't come out with the win, Jordan Luplow, a 2-homer game, hitting 1 to right field, 1 to left field. He historically has been kind of a lefties killer, but hasn't necessarily been used a whole lot against right-handed pitching. and we've seen him actually do some damage against righties so far this season. So that's certainly been good to see for the D-backs. And then, Nick Ahmed, of course, has basically come back from injury and been the team's best hitter so far. So I know we'll be talking about him a little bit later in the show as well.
Yeah, well, Brute Squad Barbecue saying Nick Ahmed becoming the best hitter on the team in the comments. I would just like to say, I feel like I saw this happening. I said this on another show, but I'm the biggest Nick Ahmed stan. I love what he provides to this team, just like as a human being in general, but also defensively, offensively, and as a leader in the clubhouse. And I genuinely don't think it's any coincidence that the Diamondbacks hitting all of a sudden got magically better when Nick Ahmed got back into the lineup, because I really do. I mean, I know he's been working on his swing and fixing some of his batting mechanics, but it's really, really cool to see him kind of giving, I feel like his presence has given this team life.
Yeah. He's one of the few veteran presences that they have, right? I mean, you look especially at their infield rotation. I mean, Geraldo Perdomo, Seth Beer getting some looks on the infield, Sergio Alcantara getting a lot of looks on the infield. A lot of these guys are not players who have a whole lot of time in the majors, right? And Nick Ahmed is certainly, not been known to be an offensive powerhouse over the course of his career. But you're right. I mean, he's just a steady presence for them. You kind of know what you're going to get. And so far, I mean, what they've gotten from Nick Ahmed is pretty much the best version of him that we've ever seen, at least through these few games that he's played so far. So, I mean, I think it's going to be huge if he can keep this up for them moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking of Nick Ahmed, let's just give it to him. Our DraftKings king of the series is our guy, Nick Ahmed. He went 5 for 11 this series with 2 home runs, 2 runs batted in, and he scored 3 runs himself. So, a great series, a great showing for Nick Ahmed. I think he is super valuable to this team, like I mentioned, just a leader in the clubhouse. And he also had that insane defensive play to get Goldie out at first, which was so great to see. That was like a Nolan Arenado level defensive play. I know they're not the same position.
I still am not totally convinced that Goldschmidt was actually out at first. It was
really
interesting. Well, because when the Cardinals challenged the play, the ruling was that the call stood, not that the call was confirmed, which basically means that they didn't have evidence to overturn the call. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they actually were able to confirm that, that Goldie was actually out at first base. So I think it was really the fact that the umpire called him out to begin with, that play turned out the way that it did. It was just so incredibly close at first base. But regardless, I mean, just an absolutely incredible play by Nick, and really at the most important moment of the game. I mean, the game was scoreless at that point, so there was really no bigger leverage point in that game up until then, and Nick came through like we've seen him do a lot in the past for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicholas saying that Ahmed play on Goldie was the play of the series. I thought he was safe too, but that game completely changes if he gets called safe. What a play. I totally agree. Like, that would have been the biggest momentum shift in that game. And, the Diamondbacks might not have won that game if that play wasn't made. So I genuinely think that whole game was resting on Nick Ahmed's shoulders, and he delivered for his team because, that would have been the difference maker, I think, in that game for sure.
And Sergio Alcantara made an error just shortly after that, and Merrill Kelly had to pick him up by basically getting 4 outs in the inning, and we've seen a lot of that lately. The Diamondbacks have still made their mistakes every now and then defensively. We saw a little bit of that today as well, but for the most part, they've been able to pick up their teammates of late, and it hasn't quite cost them the same way that it has earlier in the season.
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of a double-edged sword because our pitching staff has such great numbers because all the runs that are happening, half of them aren't earned, so it doesn't count. But obviously, you don't want to see the team making that many defensive mistakes in a game or in a series in general, just because I think, and I've said this before too, like I genuinely think like the Diamondbacks pride themselves on their defense, and so seeing them make so many errors is just really kind of frustrating. And every time like another defensive error happens, I'm just like, oh my god.
Yeah, and they've still had a lot. I know today there were 2 errors. One of them wound up being charged to Zach Davies, the other one to Ketel Marte. That was Ketel's 4th error of the season. And Jose Herrera has 4 errors as a catcher. Sergio Alcantara, his error yesterday was also his 4th of the season. 4 errors is a pretty big number, talking about having played like 21, 22 games at this point. So the D-backs still, they still need to right the ship defensively because things have still looked a little rough from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Chris also agreeing with us, saying she is so over the defensive lapses. And then
Yeah.
Brute Squad BBQ saying if Ketel turned that double play earlier in the game, we're having a different discussion right now.
Right.
Which
Right.
absolutely agree. So I agree with you 100%, Jesse. I think the defensive mistakes are what's frustrating me the most about this team right now. I think even more than the players not being able to hit the ball. Just because like it's things that's just I don't know, like
things that you feel you should have, right?
yeah,
As
it's like
opposed
things that
to,
I feel
yeah,
like are avoidable. Whereas like, hitting comes and goes in Major League Baseball and it's all about learning how to ride that wave. And
sure.
so just like seeing them make like, I just feel like bonehead errors is so infuriating and it makes me more upset than them not being able to put the ball in play.
And they have struggled offensively. I mean, things have started to look better. They've been very home run reliant as of late. A lot of these big hits that we're seeing, even in this series, a lot of the big hits that we saw were home runs. So the Diamondbacks are still going to have to find a way to manufacture runs in some other ways. We've seen a few guys struggling at the plate. Seth Beer, who I know is kind of turned into a fan favorite. He's really struggled. He's, 1 for his last 29, 1 for 30, something like that at this point at the plate. There are other guys in this lineup where it's a similar situation. David Peralta is kind of going through it offensively right now. Carson Kelly still hasn't really gotten going either. Christian Walker hit a home run today, which hopefully will get him on the right track. But I think, that's been probably the most discouraging thing for this team. And also in some ways, maybe the thing that helps you stay positive moving forward, because that a lot of those guys should be better than this. And hopefully for them, it's only a matter of time before the tide turns on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to Chris's earlier comment about the home runs being a sign of hope, I definitely hope that that's what happens. I hope Ketel takes this game and is like, okay, or this series is like, okay, like I did it. I hit a home run. I can do it. This is possible for me. Hopefully it's like a confidence booster and we see him contributing a little bit more on offense. And yeah, it's weird. It's weird to see them having this many issues this early on. But despite having this many issues, still somehow managing to find success, beating the Dodgers in a series, splitting a series with the Cardinals. Like they're having all these issues, but they're still managing to find ways to win, which to me, this team is just like the weirdest, most complex baseball puzzle that I can't seem to figure out like how they're working or like what is going on. They're just like an anomaly to me. And it's, at least it's interesting, right?
Yeah. It's been a mixture so far of some parts of the team being like near elite, mainly talking about the starting pitching, which still is, top 5, top 3 in ERA around the game, basically. And a lot of the other facets of the team being like, one of the worst in baseball. The offense, at least as of yesterday, was hitting 180 entering yesterday's game, which was 26 points lower than the next lowest team batting average in baseball. I mean, it has been that bad compared to other teams, but you've also started to see them hit a lot of home runs. The bullpen at times has actually been pretty steady. So they've done some things really, really well, and they've, been pretty much the worst in baseball at other things. So it's certainly been a fascinating product to watch so far.
Fascinating is a good way to describe it for sure. Chris saying the wins are not happening in any way any of us predicted, which is so true.
Yeah.
This team just continues to surprise me in more ways than one. You know who else is really surprising me as of late is Jordan Luplow. He looked really great this series. He provided a lot on offense. I wouldn't say robbed Dickerson's home run because I don't think it had quite enough oomph to get over there, but I think he definitely saved a run from scoring. So he's looking really good out there in the outfield, and his bat was probably one of the most active of this series. So I'm really happy to see Jordan kind of stepping up and providing some more for this team.
They've shown a lot of faith in him. I mean, Jordan Luplow's been a staple hitting second in the lineup so far, which is a pretty tall order for a guy who, is fresh off of the injured list and is not necessarily used to this kind of a role. If you look at how he's been used the last few years, like I mentioned earlier in the show, he's really been more of a platoon guy. He's really faced lefties and hasn't really done much beyond that. But yeah, Torey Lovullo has shown a lot of faith in him, batting him second against both some lefties and some righties. And so far, so good. I mean, he's come up with some of the biggest hits of the season for the D-backs. And, you hate to see a 2-run or a 2-home run game like today wasted in a game that ultimately the Diamondbacks lost. But nonetheless, he's been good for them. And like you said, he's been really good defensively too. I mean, he can play center field. He can play right field. Torey has told us those are the main positions that we'll see him play. And it also gives Dalton Varsho an opportunity to play a little bit more catcher, to play a little bit more at catcher, which we also saw today.
Yeah. Kind of wrapping things up with this Cardinals series. Jesse, how are you feeling about this team right now? Just give me your straight up emotions about where this team is at and how you're feeling overall.
I think for people who were concerned that 2022 was going to be a rerun of 2021, right? For people who thought that this team was just going to come back and do the same thing that they did last year, I think you have to feel pretty happy so far. I really don't. I've really never expected the Diamondbacks to be the same team that they were last year. I know you were pretty close to that point, Mac, with your 61 win prediction. That would be a pretty rough outcome, even though it is still a 9-game improvement from last year. But yeah, I mean, this Diamondbacks team is on pace to win roughly 70 games at this point, and you don't put too much stock into that at this point. One thing to watch, I don't know if there's much to this, but the Diamondbacks, since Torey Lovullo took over, are 39-82 in the month of May. I don't know what it is with the month of May, but it was horrible for them last year. Last year, the month of May is where the wheels really came off. They were actually pretty good in April, and I think they were 5-24 in May or something like that. And we've actually seen this a few years down in the past as well. The Diamondbacks in the month of May over these last few years have really struggled. So this is going to be a big month for them. I think after April, you just can't really get too high or too low. I was interacting with some of our followers on Twitter yesterday, talking about how the Atlanta Braves were under 500 in April last year and went on to win the World Series. So you just can't get too high.
Diamondbacks are winning the World Series this year, Jesse?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes. No, I'm saying you just can't read too much into what's happened so far. I think there have been some good signs to show fans that this team is not what it was last year. And I think that's really, really good news, at this point in the season.
Yeah, I agree 1,000% with everything you said. I'm really hoping that we don't have a repeat of last May, and May is kind of triggering for fans. It's a bad month. So I think, moving forward, if the Diamondbacks can, for the love of God, please clean up their defensive errors and also, kind of make some adjustments at the plate so that some offense is finally getting generated. Don't touch the starting pitching. Whatever the starting pitching is doing, leave them alone. Let them be. They're so good. It's the only thing the Diamondbacks really have going for them right now. But, if the starting pitching can keep doing what they're doing, they stop making dumb errors on defense, and, they can kind of get some of those bats to wake up. I think this May, knocking on wood, my dresser that my computer on is pure wood. We don't have a repeat of last May, and this May can kind of, not traumatize us D-backs fans.
Sure. One thing that I don't want to get people too down. Maybe people are going to hate me for saying this, but I do think that if you're a Diamondbacks fan right now, you should probably prepare for the starting rotation to not be, top 3 in baseball for the entire season. Just looking at some of the underlying numbers, the Diamondbacks entered yesterday with the lowest strikeout rate in baseball and one of the higher walk rates, which just kind of tells me, so far they've worked around it. They've gotten some soft contact. There's certainly some things that they've done right, but it's just not possible to, have the lowest strikeout rate in the game and end the year with, a top 3, top 5 starting rotation. That's just not going to happen. So I do think there's probably some correction that may happen with the rotation. And I think there's also some correction that'll happen with the offense. That I don't think the Diamondbacks offense is as bad as it's been. So you're probably looking at the rotation, maybe taking a little bit of a step back, and maybe the offense taking a step forward. And, when both of those things happen, you still probably wind up with a pretty decent baseball team that is in a much better spot than they were last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And all in all, to wrap up this Cardinal series, I think this is a win. I'm happy about this. I'm not
Totally.
going to let today's 7th inning dampen my mood. It happened. It's fine. I've accepted it. I'm over it. But I think splitting a series with the Cardinals is really, really great for this Diamondbacks team. And I think it's a win. So you know what? I'll take it. Obviously, winning the series would have been awesome, but that's not what happened. That wasn't in the cards today for the D-backs. No pun intended. But I definitely think this is a win. And overall, I'm happy with it, Jesse. I think this is a good jumping off point to head into the series with the Marlins.
Speaking of the Marlins, they just lost. They lost to the Mariners
Ooh.
7-3, but the Marlins had won 7 consecutive games before that. So,
Yep.
we've talked about how the Diamondbacks had this horrible, very difficult start to the season. And then the Cardinals, certainly weren't a walk in the park. And I don't know if I would expect the Marlins to be that way either. Pablo Lopez, the Marlins starter in the first game of the series tomorrow, will enter the game with a 0.39 ERA. So the Diamondbacks are not necessarily, headed for a super easy series in Miami, but they do have Zach Gallen on the mound for that one. So tomorrow, if you're a pitching duel kind of a person, if you like watching those games, tomorrow's game against Miami should be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, before we get too far down the Miami road, because we are going to preview that series, if you guys need to unwind a little bit after today's 7th inning, which I wouldn't blame you at all, our friends at OGs can definitely help you out with that, because honestly, you might need to take some OGs to relax from whatever the last 3 innings of that ball game was. So make sure you stop by your local dispensary and grab some amazing scratch-made THC gummies from our friends at OGs. They just announced their new mini OG's 3 milligram microdose option for those not wanting to dive right into their regular 10 milligram option. They'll be available on May 3rd, so 2 days from today, exclusively at Zen Leaf locations through May 11th. They have amazing flavors like my favorite orange creamsicle. I am obsessed with that flavor. Their indica line makes me sleep like a rock, which I really need working in sports and being up late. They also have tropical flavor, watermelon flavor. They just launched their new pina colada flavor, which is to die for. So if you're interested in trying these amazingly delicious variety of flavors that OG's Brands has to offer, go to ogsbrands.com. That's OGEEZ brands.com to find an OG's near you. Whoa, coughing a little bit. Okay, but looking ahead at our schedule, the Diamondbacks are going to be taking on the Marlins for a 3-game series, like you mentioned, Jesse. We'll have Zach Gallen on the mound tomorrow against Pablo Lopez. And like you said, that pitching matchup is going to be something else. And I'm really looking forward to that. Another storyline that I want to point out is we might be getting a Zach Gallen versus Jazz Chisholm matchup out there.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
Which will be extremely interesting. Obviously, those were the 2 trade pieces involved. So a little switcheroo there. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on who won that trade yet, Jesse?
Ooh, I think it's really close. It kind of depends. Would you rather have, the young shortstop with a sky high ceiling who maybe is a little bit more volatile? Or would you rather have, a starting pitcher that's already pretty steady and figures to be pretty steady for the next few years? I think it's really, really close at this point. I don't think the Diamondbacks regret the trade, but I'm not really sure the Marlins regret the trade either. So maybe it's one of, an old fashioned, both sides got what they want sort of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say I'm a huge Jazz Chisholm fan. I think he's awesome. He has the attitude and the swag that this sport really, really needs right now to be marketable
totally.
and to be entertaining. So it'll be interesting to see those 2 face off. Hopefully we get Jazz Chisholm in the lineup tomorrow against Zach Gallen. And the Marlins, though, they are coming into this matchup. I know they lost against the Mariners today, but they have won 3 consecutive series, and they beat the Braves, they beat the Nationals, which isn't really saying a lot. And they also did win the series against the Mariners, even though they lost the game today. They're also second in the National League East. So this definitely isn't, an easy winnable series for the Diamondbacks that they can't just like march in there and, take on these Miami Marlins and expect to win. So the series is going to be pretty difficult, I think. We don't know yet who's going to be going for the second game of the series for the Diamondbacks on the mound. But definitely Zach Gallen, he's going to provide the D-backs with a great chance to win. I feel like he's been really lights out this whole year so far. And then we'll have to see who goes for the second game. But I think this is, I'm scared to say it. I think this is a winnable series. The Miami Marlins are really hot right now, and them splitting a series with the Cardinals really kind of gave me some more hope in this team. They kind of made me a little bit higher on this team than I originally was. So I don't know, Jesse. What do you think? Do you think they split the series? Do you think one of three? Where are you going here?
Well, yeah, I guess you can't split a 3-game series, so someone's got to win, right?
Yikes, yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. I think this one really could go either way for sure. You mentioned game 2. The Diamondbacks haven't announced a starter at this point. Humberto Castellanos, that's his spot. So I guess they, maybe they're a little bit more hesitant to put him there. Maybe it's possible we see the team go a different direction in that spot after his last start against St. Louis, which, 2 innings, 5 runs. It was a pretty rough go for him. So it'll be interesting to see what the D-backs do there in game 2. But yeah, the first game, it's Zach Gallen. The last game of the series on Wednesday appears to be Madison Bumgarner. So, you certainly feel like you got a shot in both of those games. The Marlins pitchers in those games are going to be pretty good too. I think that's probably the Marlins' biggest asset is their starting pitching really is pretty good top to bottom. So yeah, they're probably a similar team in some ways because of that. But yeah, I mean, tomorrow is going to be a really fun pitching matchup to watch. We mentioned Pablo Lopez, Zach Gallen. We're only a few starts into the season at this point, but guys having an ERA that starts with a 0 at this point is pretty eye-opening at this stage in the season. So that should be a fun one to watch for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Brute Squad BBQ saying Marlins coming down to earth just in time. Motion on the other side saying starting May in Miami, this isn't looking good. I definitely understand both sides of that coin. I think, seeing them win 3 consecutive series in a row and the Diamondbacks only winning 1 series so far this year, it's definitely a little bit intimidating. And like you said, I think our pitching staff can pretty much go toe-to-toe with their pitching staff. So I think it's tough. I think it's definitely going to be a tough series. And now more than ever would be a great time for the Diamondbacks bats to wake up and hopefully provide this team some offense, because otherwise we're probably going to be getting some very close ball games, 1 run, 2 runs separating the team. I don't necessarily think, hopefully we're not seeing any like 3 to 8 ball games like we saw in St. Louis. But I think now is a great time for the bats to be like,
This is when you need like a trip to Coors Field, right? When the offense just isn't really clicking. This is really when, that spot in the schedule would be great. But I don't think the Diamondbacks even go to Coors Field until July. The schedule is pretty weird this season. So they're not getting that trip anytime soon. So they're going to have to hopefully find their way out of it in Miami.
The schedule makers really said, you know what, Diamondbacks, we know you had a horrible year last year, and we're going to make sure you have a really rough start to your season this year.
Yeah. I mean, it's been rough. And I was looking the other day at, you can look at the strength of schedule so far. You can also look at the strength of schedule for the rest of the season. And unfortunately, the Diamondbacks is still right near the top. And it's because, they play in the NL West. And at this point, the NL West has been far and away the best division in baseball, and it's not even close. I think the Rockies are still above 500. So the Diamondbacks right now,
I saw that happening.
I'm not sure the Rockies will necessarily stay there, but I mean, the 3 teams at the top, the Padres, the Dodgers, and the Giants, are all like 6 or 7 games above 500 after a month, which is really crazy. So I mean, in some ways, the schedule is not going to get much easier for the D-backs because they're going to be playing their divisional opponents a whole lot, as you do in baseball. And with how good this division is, that's just going to be a pretty tough situation for them.
Who do I need to call? Manfred? Excuse me, Manfred.
Yeah.
Schedule.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting next year because things will change next year where every major league team will play every other major league team. So next year we'll start to see, I think they cut down on the divisional opponents a little bit. You start to see other teams across the league more often. So I guess next year, in some ways things will maybe get a little bit easier, but for the moment, playing in the NL West is just going to be a bit of a chore. And I mean, you feel like if you were in the Cardinals' shoes in the NL Central, the Diamondbacks might be in the mix for, actually fighting in that division, because there's just not nearly the level of powerhouse that there is in the NL West with the Dodgers and the Giants and also the Padres emerging this season. So this is nothing new for Diamondbacks fans, though. They've been down this road before. So
Lord help us. I feel like the world is just against Diamondbacks fans.
there you go. There you go.
Gotta stick through it though. Looking at the DraftKings Sportsbook app for tomorrow's matchup against the Marlins, the Diamondbacks are underdogs on the money line, sitting at plus 120. The Marlins are favored at minus 140 on the money line, and the run line is actually set. The over under on the run line is set at 7. So whether that's 4 runs for the Diamondbacks and 3 for the Marlins, or however else you want to configure that run line. How do you feel about that, Jesse? Do you see 7 runs being scored in tomorrow's game?
I mean, based on the ERAs of the 2 starting pitchers, you'd probably say no. But I guess on the other hand, you're not going to maintain a 0.6 or an 0.39 for very long throughout the season. So, I mean, maybe Zach Gallen and Pablo Lopez are both due to, give up a few runs. But I would, taking the under on 7 runs feels like a pretty safe move in, a game with that kind of a star-studded pitching matchup. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely would feel comfortable taking the under of 7 runs on that matchup. But speaking of the DraftKings Sportsbook app, they are our presenting sponsor of our podcast, and they have some great deals for anybody who loves to watch the NBA playoffs, which I mean, like, who doesn't like to watch NBA playoff basketball, especially because the Suns are in the second round. They're taking on the Dallas Mavericks starting Monday, tomorrow as well. But the NBA playoffs means next level basketball. Get in on the action with the DraftKings Sportsbook app, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. This week, new customers can bet just $5 on any team to win and get $150 in free bets if they do. Looking to turn a small bet into a big payday during the NBA playoffs? With DraftKings same game parlays, you can do just that. Create your own parlay by combining multiple bets, like which team will win, total threes made, total rebounds, and more. And boom, you got a shot at an even bigger payout. Right now, all customers can place a same game parlay with 3 or more legs and get a free bet back up to $25 if one leg doesn't hit. I mean, come on. This is like a win-win situation for all of you DraftKings Sportsbook new customers out there. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PHNX. Bet just $5 on any NBA team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. That's promo code PHNX only at the DraftKings Sportsbook app. 21 and up only, Arizona only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. I am definitely going to be betting on that Suns game tomorrow. If you guys are looking for some Suns content, check out our PHNX_Suns fam. They do a great job covering those NBA playoffs. But back to baseball, Jesse, any final thoughts before we wrap up the show about the St. Louis series or the Marlins series coming up?
I just think that this was a big step forward for the D-backs. I think a lot of fans who had disengaged about a week or 2 ago are kind of like, oh, maybe this team is actually worth watching every night. And hopefully they're able to keep that up. I guess it's not necessarily every night because Wednesday we've got breakfast with the Diamondbacks again with a 9:40 a.m. local time start, Arizona time. So
crazy is that?
Yeah, we've had a lot of those recently. But yeah, I think this was just a really big series for the D-backs. And, the Marlins, like you said, are they've been playing well lately, but they're also a beatable baseball team. And I think the Diamondbacks have what they need in order to compete in this series. And, hopefully they're able to go out there and win a second series of the season. That would be really big to finish off this road trip, which has really looked pretty good for them so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. I think splitting the series with the Cardinals is a huge win for this team, and they should take it as a win, and they should be happy about this, which I'm sure that they are. They're probably on the flight to Miami right now with some good vibes on the plane, hopefully. And then now is a great time, this Miami Marlins series to put up or shut up. They got to stop the defensive errors. It's really getting old. I'm not going to lie. And I think they need to do some rain dance, moon dance, spiritual thing over their bats to get their bats to wake up. You got to do something to get some runs going because
we should create a Twitter prayer circle, right? That's what we're supposed to do.
Yes, a manifesting circle or prayer circle, anything to get these Diamondbacks to start scoring some runs. Hopefully David Peralta, Ketel Marte, all of these guys that are struggling can kind of get some of those woes worked out. Thank God Nick Ahmed is back. Nick Ahmed, I'm so happy you are back. King Nick, thank you for coming back to us at the perfect time, it seems like. But it's going to be a good series. And if you want all of our great content, make sure you sign up at gophnx.com, become a member. You can get your first month for only 50 cents. Or if you sign up for an annual membership, you'll get a free t-shirt. I have on our new PHNX Rattler shirt, which is honestly my favorite one I think we've ever made. It is so cool. He's got some bats in there, which is maybe hopefully a good omen for the bats actually being used by Diamondbacks players. But we've got exclusive content. Jesse writes amazing articles that you can only read if you're a member of PHNX. So shout out to Jesse for those beautifully crafted works of art on our website. You'll also get access to our members-only Discord, and you can chat with me and Jesse about baseball. There's lots of things to talk about when it comes to
and maybe Derek will show up. Maybe if we ever decide to let him back, then maybe he'll be in there. But we'll see.
We'll see if he can reclaim his mayor title. I think it suits me better, so he's gonna have to fight me for it. Maybe we'll have an actual election this time, since he just appointed himself the first time around.
That's fair. It always felt a little bit illegitimate to me, Mac. So I'm glad that you're here, laying down the hammer finally.
Oh, Jesse's team, Mayor Mac, and Vice Mayor Jesse.
There you go.
I love it. But like I said, we're to go doing some to be a member. We have a ton of great merch in the PHNX Locker. Hats, shirts, anything you could possibly want. Gear up for the Suns playoffs. Gear up for this Diamondback season. We may or may not have a new Diamondback shirt coming soon if a certain player can figure it out. Little teaser there. But thank you all so much for joining us. Jesse, you are the absolute best. I had a great time with you. Hopefully you let me host the show again in the future.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Anytime we can get rid of Derek, I'm always on board. So
I love it. We won't tell him that. Hopefully he's watching right now and it's just But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for hanging out with us. You guys are the absolute best, especially all of you guys in the comments. Don't forget to like this video on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and subscribe to our podcast and leave us a 5-star review. We always appreciate it. Again, thank you all so much for watching. And remember, baseball is fun, but it's even more fun when you split the series in St. Louis. Bye.